Well, City fans, normally it's a sunny day here at the Etihad, but it's a bit of a windy one today. In full disclosure, you might hear some noises through this one. Hello everybody, welcome back to, well, Manchester City's training facility. I'm here with the Manchester City, Manchester Evening News writer Joe Bray, and we've just experienced the Manchester City Open training session. Very nice, wasn't it, Joe? And yeah, what can you tell us about it, mate? What can you tell us about everything that went down today?
Well, obviously City are travelling to RB Leipzig later today ahead of the Champions League game tomorrow, and it looks like they may have to do that without Kevin de Bruyne, who was not in the open training session today. Bit of a concern. He did play the majority of the game at Nottingham Forest. He was substituted just after Forest's equaliser. There didn't seem to be Aymeric Laporte either. Now obviously some of these players could just be inside, they could have been late out to training. We only see the first 15 minutes, so we don't know if they're injured or they're not going to be available. We'll know when the squad comes out who travels to Germany. We'll know if they're there or not, and that will tell us if they're going to play or not. But the fact that they didn't train and they weren't sort of at the start of that training session is probably a bit of a concern. We also didn't see John Stones, who he's been out with a hamstring injury. We weren't expecting him to be back. He's clearly still suffering from that injury, and there were a couple of youngsters, but I don't think they would travel as well. People like Nico O'Reilly, Shea Charles and Finley Burns, they're probably just there to make up the numbers. But if we've got players like De Bruyne and Laporte not there, maybe they might get a nice trip to Germany out of it.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to get onto the preview in just a little bit, but there'd be a massive miss, wouldn't there, Joe? Seismic misses to this City side. Although Kevin de Bruyne have not been great the last couple of games, a bit hit and miss, but altogether they're experienced players who City really need in these Champions League games, don't they?
That's it, and it's been a difficult sort of few games for City. There've been players in form who've been playing well, and then you've got the likes of De Bruyne and Laporte who might not have been playing as well, but City do look a bit better when they've got their experienced players. And with a game in Leipzig, it's going to be a difficult crowd, a difficult opposition. You probably need those players who've been there and done it, so it will be interesting. But you also look at the players who could come in. You've got Bernardo Silva's been playing everywhere, he's been playing well. You've got Gundogan. City can cope without Kevin de Bruyne.
Ake as well, I guess, could come in
defence. You've got Ake, you've got Akanji. They've got players to cope if they need to.
So now, everybody, we've got the training out the way. We've spoken about the open session. Now we're going to talk about the Manchester City game tomorrow in Germany. Huge game, Joe, really, isn't it? Huge game.
Yeah, it feels a long time since we've had the Champions League with the World Cup break and everything, but it could be a bit of a welcome distraction after all the Premier League title race twists and turns. But City will have a job to do. They've got to go to Leipzig and get a good first leg result, and as much as it was probably one of the better draws they could have got, it's still not going to be easy. Obviously, the last time City were in Leipzig last season in the group stage, they lost that game. Yes, they'd won the group. Yes, they were already through as winners and could rest players, but Leipzig showed that they are a very good team and will cause City problems.
Yeah, they've always been quite problematic, haven't they, Leipzig? It always seems like the recruitment strategy is very unique.
Yeah.
Players like Josep Guardiola as well, Manchester City, allegedly quite interested in as well. Timo Werner, as we know, is out there as well. So they always do prove a little bit of a problem. So City have really got to be on the game, haven't they, for this one? And like we were just speaking about earlier, Kevin de Bruyne potentially missing, others. I mean, let's have a little bit of a discussion about that. I mean, it's a big one, isn't it, Kevin missing for this one?
Yeah, and as we were saying, he's the type of player who just his experience is useful in those sort of situations against a team who aren't afraid to give you sort of a couple of punches and test you out. And Leipzig, Champions League semi-finalists not too long ago, they're not going to be afraid of City or anyone else in this competition. So I think City will have to be on the game. I'd expect a relatively strong side. Just to account for that, and we know that Pep Guardiola takes these games very, very seriously. I'm thinking back to Mönchengladbach a year or two ago. It was a 4-0 win in the first leg, I seem to remember. But that was a strong team, and if he can get the tie, not won, but in very, very comfortable in the first leg, that's what I want to do. I don't think that will be the case. I think Leipzig are a step above that, but I can't see any rotation for this one. I can see a very strong side.
Yeah, we'll get into rotation in just a little bit, but we're just speaking off air about De Bruyne his form this season. It's been a bit hit and miss, hasn't it? I mean, he's getting a little bit older, but 32, is that old nowadays? Who knows? Hopefully not. But the Forest game was probably quite symptomatic of where he is this season. The previous game against Arsenal, he was absolutely fantastic, that brilliant goal as well. But it is a bit hit and miss at the minute for him, isn't it? So we were just speaking off air about maybe players being able to fill the void a little bit of Kevin de Bruyne.
It's a tricky one because I think he's on 13, 14 Premier League assists.
Which is nuts, isn't it, when we're talking about him?
And he's probably going to break his own record, but he's still, like we say, he's not been quite there. He's been a bit on and off. The Forest game was frustrating watching him because he's just dragging about 3 or 4 shots wide. And I mean, a lot of players had an off day at the City ground, so I don't think you can pin it all on Kevin de Bruyne. But this City squad is built so that if a player isn't there or isn't on form, then there are players coming in and coming behind and can try and force their way into that squad. And I would expect that whether it's Julian Alvarez, who's replaced Kevin de Bruyne a couple of times, or Bernardo or Gundogan, there will be players who can come in.
You do feel as well with Bernardo, with the quality that he's got, him being the main man, is probably something he thrives on, isn't it?
Yeah, and normally you would say Bernardo would come in for de Bruyne and that would be fine, but we've seen Bernardo playing that left back role a little bit, and
centre back, left back.
does he play there? But then at Forest, yes, he played well, but that's where the goal came from, and Forest did very well to pull Bernardo and then Laporte out of position and get that opening. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you whether Guardiola will stick with that plan and play a back three with Bernardo as the sort of designated left back, or does he use potentially Kevin de Bruyne's absence to restore Bernardo to that midfield.
We've spoken a little bit about a few more absentees. We were just talking about Kevin de Bruyne there, but there were a few others, weren't there, that we've mentioned that Ake maybe could come in for, was it Laporte who was missing just there, and it's another big opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, and like Guardiola was talking about what Laporte brings to the side, which is building from the back, from that side. I thought he was one of the better performers against Forest, but again, he was drawn out position for the goal. If he's not there, then there are players who can come in. You've got Diaz, Akanji and Ake between them. You've got 3 very good central defenders. Who plays at left back is then a recurring issue that we keep gonna find out. But it'll be a blow if Laporte and De Bruyne aren't there. But City have the players that can come in.
So you mentioned earlier on rotation. Forest game, for me, probably one of the better players was Phil Foden. At last, we saw a little bit of development from his games. He's really struggled this season, hasn't he, Joe, to really find his feet in the Premier League for Manchester City. But do you think there's going to be a temptation for Pep maybe to rotate that front three, or do you think we're going to stick with the same three that we've seen for the last 6-7 games?
I think he did well at Forest. I think Guardiola said he's lacks that pause and that sort of rhythm that we sort of saw where he was through on goal and didn't know whether to pass to Haaland or shoot himself, and ended up just falling over the ball.
Thinking maybe a little bit more, it would have been instinct beforehand.
That's it. But the amount of times he got in past his defender and cut back and just no one was there, or the Forest defence was just too compact to snuff it out. I think he did enough to keep his place, but then you've got Grealish, who appears undroppable on the side, and Mahrez on the other side, who's not really done anything wrong to be dropped for that game. So I think that will be an interesting one to see just what Guardiola thinks of that front three. He did say after the game that Mahrez, that if Foden wants to get back in the side, it's Mahrez who he'll be replacing. So it seems like Grealish on that left-hand side has a free run at that. I think Grealish has started the last 6 or 7 games. So maybe Foden's route back to form is on the right.
So what do you think's happened with Jack then? What do you think's happened with him in the past, 9 games? I saw a statistic, and it was before the World Cup and after the World Cup, and his statistics are just mind-blowing, really, when you look at post-World Cup. What do you think's changed with him?
I think it's confidence, and he's got a run in the side. He started, I think, 7 in a row, and I would be surprised if he'd started that before that amount of games in a row in his City career before that. I think he's playing similar to as he always does. His role in the team is to keep the ball, avoid a couple of tackles and switch the play, but now maybe he's getting that little bit of confidence back, and he's taking those shots and making those crosses, and slowly but surely the assists and the goals are coming back. And you heard him after Arsenal, he wasn't apologetic that he got a bit of luck with the goal, and then he got the assist at Forest. It wasn't a particularly scientific one, but
take it though, wouldn't you?
Yeah. after the stick he's been getting, it's something that he will be quite happy to get.
And I guess that's maybe what's happening with Foden at the minute. Maybe pre-World Cup we saw Phil Foden obviously hat-trick against Man United, your confidence brewing, and Jack's confidence was maybe on the floor a little bit. just seems to have switched a little bit, and that's how football works, isn't it? Confidence plays such a massive part in a player's mentality.
Well, this is it with City. If you're not on it, someone's going to come in and they're going to take your spot. And I think Grealish has benefited from having a year, probably a year and a half now, of learning the system. That's in his head now. He doesn't have to think about what he's got to do. It's second nature to him now, and I think we're seeing the results of that. And Foden's obviously had far longer to get used to that. But if you do drop, if your standards drop for a game or two, then you're out of the team. And in the long run, Foden will probably be better for it.
100%. So Pep Guardiola been receiving a bit of criticism lately. I'm struggling to believe it at the minute, Joe. I think we've seen a real turn when it's come to Manchester City's performances. I think the Nottingham Forest game, he's getting blamed for that. We've seen Rodri missing a massive chance, seeing Haaland. You've never seen anything quite like that from Erling Haaland. Obviously Laporte's missed as well. Is there any blame that can be put at his door at the minute? Because I feel like I've seen a little bit of a change when it's come to Man City in a really positive way.
Yeah, on one hand it feels like one step forward, one step back at the moment. But when it comes to that Forest game, he was calm after the game. He said, and he's always said this, that if you're creating chances, it's not really a problem. On another day, City win that game 5-0, 5-1, and no one's batting an eyelid because they've created so many chances, they've dominated. But when you got players like, as you say, Haaland, De Bruyne, Foden not got the shooting boots on, and then Laporte and Rodri are missing those chances that they've probably scored about 5 times in the session that we've just seen.
Today,
you can't really do much about that, and it doesn't really take a lot to fix it, I don't think either. I think the only thing I would question Guardiola on the Forest game is he made no substitutions before the goal, but
we've seen that before, haven't we, with Guardiola?
Again, City were dominating the game, so I think you can be frustrated with the result and just also put it down to just one of those days where it's just an off day, isn't it?
But I guess, we've seen this before, and I know yourself, you've done a piece on it, I believe. If they're not scoring goals, if they're not being ruthless, completely ruthless, we know City score goals, but they've got to start keeping it out of the back, haven't they? I mean, is it they've not had it's like a succession of clean sheets in 5 or 6 games, but they've got to start keeping. I know it sounds obvious, but if you're not scoring enough goals, you've got to keep it out, haven't you, at the back?
That's what Kyle Walker said after the game. He said it doesn't matter if the strikers aren't scoring, but as defenders they need to be keeping clean sheets. And I've been looking into a little bit of what Ederson's role is in the team, and there seems to be a few fans who aren't happy with the fact that City are conceding with their only shot on target. Now I don't think he could have done anything about the Nottingham Forest goal, but yes, it's an issue that City are being a little bit wasteful in attack, and then when they do concede 1 or 2 shots on target, it's becoming costly. So maybe that's something that they need to look at, and also the fact that when Erling Haaland doesn't score, City don't tend to score goals. They only average about 1 a game, and they have a win percentage of about 33% when Haaland doesn't score. So they probably need to look at that as well. Do they have a plan B that if Erling Haaland is having an off day, he's had a lot of on days, but if he's blasting the ball over the bar like he did at Forest, have they got another way that they can get goals?
Okay, so let's get into the real meat and what the viewers will definitely want to see on this one. They'll want to know your score prediction, Joe. So I'm going to give mine straight off the bat. I think this is going to be comfortable for City. I really do. I don't know if I'm being a little bit naive there, probably. We know it's going to be a tricky game. Leipzig's never easy. Going out to Germany is never easy. But I'm going to go with quite a comfortable 3-1 victory. I think the performance has definitely been improving. City's, as I mentioned before with Phil Foden, it seems that strength in depth can be a massive plus for them up front as well. Phil Foden, we know his ability. They've got to get the balance at the back right, I think, Joe. That's huge. I think they've really struggled with that recently. But for me, 3-1. What about yourself, and how do you see it going?
I think a little bit tighter than that, maybe 2-1 or 1-0. I can see City going ahead. I think if you offered them a draw, they'd probably take it, come back here and probably a stronger squad if they do have De Bruyne missing. But I think City will, as they always do, go and try and win. If they have Ake at left back and a more settled defence, I think they'll be able to deal with Leipzig. So I'll say 2-1.
So if I'm going to press you as well, you just mentioned Ake there. What would your starting 11 be, Joe? What would you go with? I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
We try this every week. I don't think I've ever got a Pep Guardiola starting 11 right.
Well, what would you go for then?
I'd put Ake back at left back. I would put probably Diaz and Akanji. In the middle, and then in place of De Bruyne, assuming that he's not there, probably Julian Alvarez. I think he brings a bit more energy behind Erling Haaland as well, and you've still got Gundogan and potentially Bernardo to play as well. And as much as we've been talking about Foden, I'd probably play Grealish and Mahrez on the wings.
Grealish and Mahrez on the rings, right, well, you've got it there, City fans. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. Normally I'm by myself, so thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure you're liking, commenting and subscribing to the Manchester City, Manchester Evening News YouTube channel. Also, check out Talking City on all of our audio platforms. It's there for you to download. Joe's featuring every week, so that's definitely a reason to get involved. Guys, we will see you in a bit. Cheers.